Hello and welcome to this Innovation Spotlight Roundtable from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI. Today we are focusing on the topic of the future of self-serve food. My name is Michael Jones from Progressive Content and Editorial Director of FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. This roundtable is supported by the good people at Multiteria, thank you to them, and will address, amongst other things, how COVID-19 has impacted self-service food service in the past 18 months, plus the short and long-term future trends for cafeteria design and how serveries will evolve accordingly. I'm delighted to be joined by two leading consultants, an expert operator, and an executive vice president from Multiteria. So let me ask each of them to introduce themselves. Sojo, ladies first, can we start with you, please?
Hi, my name is Sojo Alex, and I'm a senior associate at Envision Strategies. I have been in food service for more than 18 years or so, and 8 out of that has been more on the consultancy side. So I worked on both self-operated and contract campuses, and where I kind of do more higher ed MAS consultancy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sojo. And Leif, please.
Hi, I'm Leif Billings with Next Step Design. Run the New York division, the Eastern Coast. Been food service consulting for 15 years and been in hospitality since I was 15 years old in the restaurant industry.
Fantastic. Thank you, Leif. And Jill, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jill Horst. I'm the Executive Director of Campus Dining at UC Santa Barbara. I have over 34 years of experience in the hospitality segment, with the last 26 being at UC Santa Barbara. Anything about food on the campus is me. We have, 29 different eateries and facilities and serve over 6 million meals a year.
Wow. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Jill. And finally, Mike, please.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. My name is Mike Egan. I'm the Executive Vice President of Multiteria. Multiteria is a leading manufacturer in the United States for retail serving counters. We are a division of Lakeside Manufacturing. Our products serve all food service segments, K through 12, higher education, B&I, healthcare. We also have a specialty segment called Specialty Retail that also gets into small kiosks as well as fast casual restaurants.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Okay, Jill, can you maybe set the scene for us, please, and describe some of the main challenges that your food service operations at UC Santa Barbara have had to endure for the past 18 months and how your team have adapted to those? What did you do in order to keep operations going and open where possible throughout the pandemic and after?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you, the last 18 to 20 months have been a huge challenge. I mean, we faced a pandemic and something that we've never experienced in the past. But first and most priority for me was really the safety of the staff and the students and the guests that are coming through the doors. And so we went from having our doors open to actually closing our doors because of the pandemic and the students leaving the campus. And throughout the time, we began reopening facilities because we are essential, and we were providing food to the essential staff on campus, along with the students that didn't have another place to go home to when the campus closed. So that's 18 months ago. And as we've evolved, we've brought students back to campus, and we reopened some of our facilities. And so when we took the stance to reopen, it was really looking through the lenses of safety first. Safety of my staff, safety of the customers, safety of the guests coming through, and also, our vendor partners. And so we reimagined basically all of our facilities by looking at what is the safest way to produce and provide food to our customers. So we put up safety shields. We took away self-service. And we really just reimagined what was happening on every platform and every servery within our facilities. Then when you get to the food component about what could we serve that was normally meant to be plated on a plate, but then was going into a to-go container that was getting a lid on it, that was steaming as it goes out the door, and looking at what is that doing to the integrity of the food. So we shifted a lot of what kind of food we were going to be serving, what was going to work within the parameters and the restrictions that we were at, what we were dealing with. But, with challenges also come opportunities. And so we had an opportunity to really look at our whole food service operation and our ability to shift in ways that maybe we hadn't in the past, because it was something that we've always done and done in a certain way, but we weren't doing anything the way that we used to do it, 2 years ago. So we were able to really look at our food service operation as a whole, and what were the opportunities that we wanted to gravitate towards, and what do we want to do differently, and what do we want to keep the same. So we had to be nimble, we had to be flexible, we had to try things, we had to also own our shortcomings, but again, looking for what can we do to improve the overall operations. We're at the point now that we have a blank canvas and we're painting our food service picture.
Jill, that's a fantastic summation. Thank you so much for that. Let's bring the consultants in and get their view. Sojo, what was your experience then of helping your clients through the pandemic, and what measures have you seen your operator clients in the institutional or educational sector put in place that have helped them to pivot, as Jill said, or adapt their food service operations?
I completely agree with Jill. Pretty much what she explained in like 5 minutes is what everyone went through in 18 months. So one of the big things I think we actually worked on, and what our clients were asking for, is this whole business planning side of it, right? Because they had to shift from 20 locations on campus where every building had a storage room that had a coffee shop in there, to now you have 5 because you can't open every. So we helped with a lot of the business planning side of it. It was like, okay, what does that mean if I do this, which could potentially help in the future as well. Operationally, there were a lot of things that we did, which included safety, of course. Then looking at every operation, what's important, what do you do? How do you change a all you care to eat location to more of a grab and go retail type of location? And what does that involve? Including what does that mean for sustainability, which was, nowhere in the picture in those 18 months, because a lot of universities that we know are sustainability was number one in everything they talked about, and suddenly you couldn't see it anymore. So what does that mean if there's more retail locations and grab and go kiosks? The other thing we did notice was communication. It was a big, I wouldn't say it was an issue, but it was a big opportunity where people started working a lot more in their silos, and who were working silos, suddenly they all had to work together. That whole communication aspect of it, which was not there, and suddenly it is there now. That was a big thing that we had to work. Like, what does that mean if you have to communicate to someone in another department, whole section of the university, to the students, to your parents, to everybody in those different aspects of it, and what did it take, and how do you communicate it? Because you can't put a poster up on campus anymore because nobody's on campus. So besides that, there were other things like financially we were looking for, not only the labor side of it, but how do I change my meal plans, right? What does that look like anymore? Because your unlimited all you care to eat accesses is not there anymore. So what does that mean? How do you still make it flexible for students who are on campus? Which mean, do I add more money on that? Can they go to retail? Can I use my swipe to go eat at a retail location? Which means operationally, what does that mean for us? So how do you change your meal plans to the future, and what does that look like? Other communication aspects we thought was food insecurity was a big thing, because they couldn't handle that anymore on campus because everything was closed. But them leading that aspect, sitting at the table, talking about it, and how can you work on that? Besides self-operated, if they're contracted schools, it was more about renegotiating their contracts. Yeah. What does that mean anymore as they get it? Because every day changed. So it changed. And so good thing was we have a lot of network of all food services people who all actually came together to say, okay, this is what we're doing. What are you doing? Okay, how can we take this news to the other person and kind of keep that pool of information together so anyone could take what they wanted.
Great answer. Thank you, Sojo. Clearly, communication being an absolutely pivotal aspect in all of that. Leif, let's get your view on that, please. How about your clients and how things work for them? What operational pivots or recalibrations worked well, but also what didn't work well? And finally, what flexibility have you seen put in place by clients that has really sort of inspired you?
We do a lot of business dining, but we also do a lot of high-end restaurants. And I think the neatest thing to see in the pandemic was adaptability of food service people. I think food service people have a way that they can shift gears very quickly from one setting to another, and that always impresses me. But what we did see, and Jill hit on this spot on, was a lot of shift to takeout, grab and go, and those types of things that sometimes your kitchen's not set up for those. And so how do you turn that kitchen into something that can do catering? How can they do grab and go? How can they do takeout well? And we saw with some of our high-end restaurants turning their private dining rooms into staging rooms for meal kit shipping and for grab and go staging and all sorts of things that, would never have been thought to use that space 2 years ago. So I thought that was very neat. And what we're seeing a lot more of now is making purposeful spaces and new designs that are staged to have all of that catering and grab and go type prep areas and storage areas. So we're sometimes placing walk-in coolers and kind of fields of tables where you're flexible. You're not locked into a particular a la carte style design. You can move tables around. You can set up assembly lines and really make a lot of use of a space. We've seen that happen in some storage spaces, and it's really just finding a space where you can carve out to create that whole program that didn't exist before.
Great answer. Thank you, Leif. Mike, from your perspective as a manufacturer, I think one of the key words that all three of the other attendees here have used quite a lot is flexibility. So let's talk about some other kind of, I guess, significant short and long-term trends, future trends for cafeteria design, and how do you foresee serveries evolving in reaction to the experiences that have been outlined by your colleagues here?
Jill, you had mentioned barriers. I remember the early parts of COVID, all of us not knowing how we were going to create these greenhouses that separated servers from our customers. We also came out with a series of acrylic barriers that people put duct tape, Velcro, and everybody just went like nuts trying to protect ourselves from breath and all this other things. But I'm thinking and I'm hoping that some of these barriers are coming down in the short term. There's still maybe some acrylic breath separators at cashiers, but for the most part, I've seen a lot of people taking the barriers down. So that's a good sign to get into a post-COVID world of not having to worry about that too much. Again, on the short term, again, as a manufacturer, we're seeing an increase in customers realizing how important convertible food shields are. There are many customers that wanted serve only, and there's no flexibility to close that glass. So if that food station, again, for the short term, particularly for new installations, customers are wanting the convertibility so that that station can be used as a serve only. And as we get out of COVID and back to a degree of normalcy, that station can easily convert to a self-serve station. So that's just one of the small things. It was mentioned also about grab and go. We're getting a lot more requests on grab and go components. And the odd thing is, grab and go is not a brand new concept to food service. But what it's done is it's created a lot of operators to either expand what they have or create new outlets for that. And that could be driven by, not being able to serve food or bringing food to different places. Maybe it be residence halls, but just expanding that capability. And it's nice to see that because grab and go does solve a labor problem, which I'm sure we'll get into in a moment. Last but not least, I still see a lot of projects from designers and some of our customers that are still looking for salad bars, these island pieces that are dual-sided. And I was kind of surprised because, again, in the beginning part of COVID, we didn't know where we were going to go and how safe we were going to be. But again, I think the world is still planning for a post-COVID time where we will get back to some degree of normalcy. But again, there's still a big drive and a lot of self-serve applications, particularly in high volume, where the service-only aspect just won't work because of population, labor issues, and all those other things.
That's a great overview. Thank you very much, Mike. Leif, Jill, Sojo, would you like to comment on any of the trends that Mike's picked up on there? Do you think there are others that haven't been mentioned?
Sure. I think Mike nailed it with the buffet thing. I mean, we are seeing a lot of those buffets still being utilized, but utilized differently. Instead of having a giant field of lettuce in the middle, you might have pre-portioned things going into these salad bars so that, you don't have 200 people going through the same line, handling the same tongs. They're just grabbing their own meal and departing. And so it's speeding up efficiency. But I think, like Mike said, love them or hate them, the self-service model is somewhat of a necessity because of labor shortages, because of efficiency. I think they're kind of here to stay, I believe.
Jill, what's your view on the salad bar? Do you think its demise has been grossly exaggerated, or is it here to stay kind of post-pandemic?
I think it's here to stay. I think that it's going to change. It's morphed from what it used to be of a 50-foot salad bar with 100 different items. And it's more about condensing the footprint, but having different food or different offerings within that bar, that salad bar, or that linear square footage, maybe more composed salads, maybe salads that are ready just to pick up. But they're important because, one, for the labor shortage, two, that at least my clientele likes to customize. Yep. And it's giving them the opportunity to build what they want, to add as much or as little of an ingredient. It's a way to meet a lot of people's different needs, whether dietary needs or if they're looking for something vegan, vegetarian, and what are you putting out there? And it's fresh and healthy. I'm fortunate to be in the produce basket of the country, being in the Santa Barbara County. So it's ready and it's available. There's an expectation that I have that, but I'm not having 100 items on the salad bar anymore. I might have 15. Yeah. So it's still there, but it's just changed. It's morphed into something a little different. But self-service is, it had to go on pause for a while. It was on pause, but it's back. It's back because the customers want it back. And we've learned a lot in the last 18 to 20 months of how to serve food safely.
Great answer, Jill. Thank you. And Sojo, what's your view on the whether there's a place in the cafeteria for the salad bar in the kind of long-term future?
I would agree to what Jill and Leif were saying, but to add to that, Jill, I think the whole supply chain too. So you can't have a lot of food that you used to have before. It's one of those things that we have to think about as well when it comes to the salad bar. But I would agree with Jill. At least all the campuses that we've visited over the past couple of months has the salad bar, less options, and people do want to use it themselves. Regards to self-service, likewise, they do like that customized option. There are things that they'd like to touch and feel, but there are other people who don't. But we've also seen, when I was on a campus once, we've also seen them ask, like, if they don't want to touch it, can I have a new spoon, or can I have a new pair of tongs, or that type of thing, or ask someone to serve them as well. But I would concur with the whole labor shortage as well. So that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, that's a huge topic. Let's come to labor in a second. But before then, Leif, you mentioned previously kind of how spaces are changing, primarily, I guess, front of house, but also back of house as well. How are operators that you work with adapting, adjusting to smaller groups in cafeterias, managing flow differently or more efficiently? Are you already changing how you design spaces to account for this? Kind of what are the key changes?
I'm in New York. So New York, we're not 100% back to normal. So we haven't really seen how a lot of our operators are going to deal with having a huge influx of people come back to the office. In the ones that we have seen a lot of dispersing of groups where they're doing a lot more out of their pantries rather than in the large cafeteria areas. But I think once everybody comes back, that's not going to be completely possible to have everybody work out of pantries, and the cafeteria zone is going to come back. And I'm sure Jill's seeing that, being in college dining, the kids are back to school. I think she could probably comment very well on that. Yeah,
absolutely. So, our goal when the students returned in the fall was to try and de-densify the dining rooms, because we have these huge dining rooms that seat, 600, 700, 800 students. And we were trying to create some social or some physical distance. When we, shifted where the furniture was going and the seats and the tables, just try and create more space. We noticed that the students didn't want that. They still want to be in a community together. They want to sit at a communal table. And so the actions that we were taking weren't really living up to what their expectations were. So we expanded our meal hours to kind of help with the crowds and the dining room being so dense with the students, but that's not what they want. They want to be able to utilize the entire space.
Yeah.
And so, by having safety measures in place, like we all have to wear masks right now or face coverings. And so when a student enters, they have a face covering on. They gather all their food, they have face covering on, but it's when they sit down, they could take their face covering off to dine. But we tried a lot of different things to try and de-densify the dining rooms, but that's not really what they wanted. And we figured out a way to do it safely. So feel really comfortable with that. But back to a part earlier in the conversation about reutilizing, maybe dining rooms and repurposing spaces that we never had before because we were doing grab and go or we were doing takeout or catering, curbside pickup or whatever it may be. I recently converted one of my all you care to eat dining facilities into a strictly takeout only house, mobile ordering, pre-order, and I have food lockers that they come and use. And so it's really about they're coming in and getting food in this really small footprint because I'm using that dining room and the rest of that space for other services like catering, like some of our grab and go. And so repurposed even the front of the house to be back of the house and created a real small footprint for this takeout program using food lockers and mobile ordering. So it's really reimagining our space to meet whatever kind of service needs we're looking to accomplish.
Excellent. Sojo, did you have a view on that at all?
Sure. Before that, Jill and Leif, and even Mike, quick question. So we talked a lot about safety and distancing and design outside, right, in the servery or outside by seating. What does that look like in the kitchen? How do you keep the safety aspect of it still going? And is there any change to the design?
Sure. We're not seeing a whole lot of differences in the actual kitchen other than what I spoke about with just some of the staging and prep areas for catering and takeout. I would say, generally speaking, food service is a fairly safe field. And I think, there's a lot of practices put into place that were, pre-pandemic, hand washing rules and the signs and all of that. I mean, there's just a few little things we've done. We've been a little extra careful on placement of hand sinks, maybe going a little bit overboard in newer designs and having a few extras. And going back to a lot of this technology that's been around for a while, but the electric faucets, knee pedal faucets, foot pedal faucets to eliminate contact surfaces. And, doing some more like the UV knife sterilizing and tool cabinets. It's nothing that's really new, but it maybe we're a little more sensitive about it because of everything that was going on in the world. And we're also seeing some of these ozone generator type things in the kitchens that are supposed to attack the bacteria. And, but the kitchen still looks like a kitchen. And I think anybody that walked in would be pretty familiar with the space.
What feedback are you getting, Mike, in terms of how kitchens might adapt in the future?
Again, a lot of what we're looking at is really still very much traditional. What we're seeing is more of an impact on the labor side, specifically in the K through 12 side. And that's not to say Jill doesn't have labor issues as well, but I'm intrigued by how shortages of labor affect how food is packaged and how it's served. And I do have to commend food service directors. I mean, it's been a very, very challenging time to be able to serve a customer base that has expectations. A lot of times you don't have a rule book and you're trying to figure this stuff out, but it's particularly challenging in K through 12 because they need direction and they're not getting it. There's federal and state funding sources. There's lack of money. There's all kinds of challenges. And like many industries, so many people have retired early or aren't returning back to work. So they, sometimes make $1.98 on lunch on a good day. Their price ratio is very, very different, and they still have to serve balanced meals. So I think that's a really big challenge in the K through 12 component, because a lot of districts are now going to prepackaged, pre-portioned foods because they don't have the labor to process things, let alone from scratch. So that involves a whole bunch of other redesign in the kitchens, right, Leif? You've probably seen some of these combi ovens that are more very easy to program, and they're able to cook processed food or prepackaged food. And once they implement that and work with as least labor as possible, how it affects the cafeteria is it just drives more grab and go. So you'll have,
Right.
more air screens, you'll have more hot food shoots, less bulk panning. We talked earlier about salad bars and how they're being used instead of bulk service. Everything's pre-portioned in clamshells for the interim. We have to think about that disposable packaging too, particularly when, Jill, you have a great sustainable practice program there. You have all this extra paper and all this other stuff. So I think on the serving line side, we're seeing a lot more adaptability towards that more grab and go versus bulk pan portions and serving.
I mean, that's the biggest issue that I've been hearing from most of our clients. And, you would think it was, the safety and that. And I think, again, food service people are used to figuring out safety. They're trained in safety. And so it's like, all right, this is a new thing, but we know how to, be safe about it. But nobody can just make employees appear. And it doesn't matter if you're, on our end in high-end dining and Danielle Ballou or a Tom Colicchio or, they're all having trouble. And they all tell me that when I go, to visit these restaurants. And so I really think that's probably the greatest challenge. And we've seen some really creative stuff. I have a sushi restaurant we're working on right now where they're actually buying sushi making robots to build the sushi rolls. And I didn't even know those existed. And they were like, oh yeah, we saw these in Japan, and they're actually bringing them into the prep kitchen so they can do a very heavy grab and go sushi program. And it's pretty remarkable. But I guess desperate times call for desperate measures.
Jill, what's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, labor is a huge challenge for us. And, my motto right now is work smarter, not harder. Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? And, there's some trade-offs. Maybe our menus aren't as expansive as they used to be. Maybe we're just really focusing in on creating delicious, nutritious food. And it's not 10 options, it's 3 options. Because I think we are in for a labor shortage for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so how do you adapt, and how do you pivot, and how do you do a U-turn? I mean, I've U-turned so many times going down a path, and it's not the right way. But grab and go is an option to help. It's really about finding the right equipment to do the job. If that means, buying different types of equipment that will help chop, dice, shoot. I mean, we're a scratch-based campus. We do everything from scratch. There's been some sacrifices. Am I buying in some prepared produce? Yeah, I don't ever like to do that, but I'm doing that because of the situation that we're in. So we have to really look at where are we utilizing our labor and to do what task.
Thank you, Jill. Sojo, how are you working with clients to help them to best utilize the labor they have got, or indeed adapt to where there is a lack of it?
So now if we don't have labor, just like Jill talked about, what is actually going to fill the gap? Is it robotics? Is it some sort of micro markets? It's anything else? What can we do? That's one. Trying to utilize more of the labor besides the prepping side of it for more of the side where if it's an app ordering, how to use them there. We talked a little while ago, we talked about cashless operations and how that's working or not working. I was on a campus, everything was, app ordered or kiosk ordered. There was a register that was barely used, and only if you have cash can you go to the register. Everything else is by app. But then that saves that one person standing at the cash register to go back and actually prep the food for people ordering at the locations as well. So that's how we've seen just re-strategizing where you place the labor. The other things we've also seen, and Jill, you kind of talked a little bit about this, is using either the dining halls or starting to plan commissary kitchens to be used as, ghost kitchens for that matter. Mm-hmm. So here you've got all the staff that either if catering is not working, you can take all that staff, help them prepare a certain thing, and that could be ordered by app and delivered or put in a food locker or however it is. So they've started to repurpose a lot of these huge kitchen areas and things like that they've closed for the time being, or even starting to plan, hey, if everything is going to go more retail, we don't need 7 Titanic all you care to eat locations, but we need only 2. What else can you do? Use those kitchens in a better way.
Great answer. Thank you, Soja. You mentioned there about sort of cashless systems. What sort of appetite have you seen for things like just walk out technology with your clients?
Some of the just walk out was the whole Amazon Go type of concept, right? We've heard a few clients talking about it, planning or thinking about this. But one of the things that we are trying to figure out, even the more we work on different campuses, is the whole transactional versus personal relationships, because a lot of the just walk out technology, any of the app ordering, all that is fast, it's quick. You get your stuff, what you need, you can go. But that whole personal relationship between someone asking, hey, how's your day going, is not there anymore. We're still trying to figure out, do students want that, or they just want the convenience to pick the food up and go? And that's mostly at retail, right? But at residential dining hall, they get the people who are serving to get that one-on-one conversation. So that whole transactional versus personal, which we know transactional is going to stay for a long time, but how much is too much? The whole upselling side of it. Oh, I know, I want a burger. Would you like a Coke with that? That's not there anymore. If I want it, I order it on my app, robotically or whatever. If it is possible, it might be, but that personal relationship is not there. You can use your meal plan, so they don't have that whole cash thing anymore. It's just that they've added money on the card and they can use that as convenience as well. So those are some of the things that we've seen come up and just walk out. And besides the micro market and robotic vending, those are some of the other things as well. So
excellent, thank you, Jill. What's your view on that? On kind of cashless payment systems? What do you stand to gain from them? What do you lose?
Yeah, I think there's a place for a combination of everything. I mean that transactional sale is important to get the flow of people, but also the human connection is also really important. So I think that as I'm looking on campus for, new projects and new facilities I'm looking for a hybrid of both. Maybe at one point in time, it could be that personal connection, but then after hours, it switched to that transactional only. And so how do you do a hybrid of that? Because on a college campus, our clientele are primarily, the students, at least 18 to 22 to 23, and they really need that human connection. It's so important for mental health. And if you're just strictly transactional, there's nobody really there to watch over them. And that's part of our responsibility in dining services, is that we're an extension of their living quarters. We're their next family. And so to go strictly transactional is not something that I would ever be a fan of or advocate for, because it really is that human connection is really important. But you need both in order to be successful on a campus that has 25,000 students. As I look to the future, staffing's still going to be a challenge. What kind of blend can you do looking forward? But I think that's also part of the future, the wave of the future, because that's like dining anytime. And I think that, people want food around the clock. They don't want it at a traditional breakfast, lunch, and dinner that we think. I'll call myself a seasoned adult, that I think you need to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at a certain time. But the students and the clientele want to eat whenever they want. So there's a win-win when you bring some of these other kind of concepts onto a college campus.
Leif, can I get your view? A lovely phrase there that Jill mentioned about the human connection, losing the human connection. What's your kind of view, not necessarily with things like cashless payments, but just how vital it is to retain that human connection in hospitality? Obviously, a lot of your operations are B&I or higher end restaurants. How fundamental is that to the future of what we're doing?
And I think you nailed the right word. It's hospitality, and I think that's what people are looking for, whether they're going to a restaurant, they're going to a quick service, they're going to a hospital, or really anywhere where you're experiencing food, because food is a very social aspect. And I think if you're not hitting the hospitality side, you're kind of missing the mark. And Soja had a good point with how do you do that if you're just doing everything through an app or through a phone. It's tough. And Jill had said earlier in the day when we spoke, sometimes that person at the cash register or behind the, hotline or whatever it is might be the only person some of these kids might talk to in an entire day.
Yeah.
So I think it's essential. Talk about the essential workers. It's a huge, huge, huge part of, the hospitality industry for sure, and making that little connection.
Great answer. Thank you, Leif. All right, I'm going to wrap things up then by asking all of you, if you could just spend a minute or so, just give me your view on what do you think is either the most exciting type of innovation or trend for cafeteria design and how serveries will evolve in the next decade, and sort of what's really changing the game for you and exciting you. Mike, can we start with you first, please?
Certainly. I think, and we touched on robotics earlier, but I think robotics are going to play a much bigger role in new equipment development, not only for the labor component, but also there's a degree of animation with it too as well. But there's robotic barista equipment, there's automated pizza, there's ice cream, there's all kinds of things that I think our industry is going to see a lot more of that for good reason. I also think you're going to see an ongoing improvement in multi-purpose, multifunctional equipment, better ways of heating and cooling product, especially in a retail to-go, grab-and-go environment. I think we're going to see a lot more of that smart technology that's built into like Ovention ovens. Everybody uses Turbo Chef as a generic name, and combi oven technology, I think, just has to continue to improve for faster speed and also focus on great doneness for sensitive products too. So I think we'll still see innovation there.
Superb answer. Thank you, Mike. Sojo, same question to you, please.
In terms of trends, I'm thinking I've seen a lot of lately and possibly into the future, a lot of local restaurant like integration on campus as well, where, there's either because of dietary requirements or more ethnic and authentic food and that type of thing, that we've seen that shift a lot, where one of the locations might be a rotating type of restaurant, but then they're integrating the community as part of the overall campus. That's something we've seen. But app ordering is here to stay. So how we play around with that, what we've noticed is app ordering is great, but it's the time. People are ordering in advance. But like the other day, I ordered a cup of coffee when I was on a campus. They said 45-minute wait. I got it 62 minutes later. It's because people are trying to order it in advance and, not pick up their food. And what does that mean? But how do you manage that whole time? Well, of course, grab and go is also going to be here, but adding sustainability to that part of it and safety to that part of it as well. I think those are some of the things that we've heard most about. So
great. Thank you, Sergey. And same question to you as well, please, Leif.
Yeah, I think, Mike with his robotics thing, I think that is definitely going to be a big part. And just, food service technology at a whole, lot of this equipment's been around for a while, like turbo chefs, like combi ovens. I think with the supply chain shortages, people are thinking about how do I make my food last longer? Guest shortages, when a restaurant shut down, well, do I throw all that food out? How do I preserve that food? So I think we're going to see a lot of people dealing with the vacuum sealing and the blast chilling and being able to make their food stretch. I mean, to not be able to get supplies. I mean, who would have known that 2 years ago we would have run out of toilet paper around the entire country? And that's not just toilet paper. I mean, it's blueberries, it's, different fruits. It's chicken wings. I don't know how many times I've been to a restaurant that, we're all out of chicken wings. Just with that whole supply chain shortage and the labor shortage, that's going to drive the necessity of embracing different pieces of technology.
We talk about supply chain, labor, food shortages, things like that. And I just think, I know it's not on our agenda to talk about the manufacturing side of supply chain. I think everyone is aware that there is a global trade shortage on a lot of things. Some food service equipment manufacturers are suffering terrible delays to no choice of their own, whether they be refrigeration companies for foam, or it could be a computer chip in a control board that controls the combi oven we're talking about. And some of these lead times are stretching out to as many as 20, 26 weeks. So it is unfortunate. I don't, depending on your news source, I don't know if we'll see an end to this for maybe 6 to 12 months, depending on how things work out. That's another problem for a lot of our customers and end users, is that lead time for just the very basic essential equipment items. Leif, I don't know if you've seen it in your business, but as we struggle through all these things, and Jill mentioned it earlier about communication, or was it Sojo, how we communicate with one another, it's also important to communicate, from a consultant's level, from a manufacturer's level, from a director's level, and we talk about how soon things can be manufactured, when they can get there. And I think that communication provides people, when you run that information up the pole sooner than later, I think people have more time to plan. Mm-hmm. I also think people are more patient with things since COVID.
It's definitely a struggle, and it's kind of I would say it's a new part of everybody's job that's in here, whether you're the kitchen contractor or general contractor or food service consultant, you're dealing with it multiple times a day. It could be a dozen emails or calls that, oh, my walk-in's not showing up until February and it was supposed to be here next week. And it's actually a lot of time going into managing that and then explaining to the clients, like Mike said, it's chips, it's foam, it's stainless steel, huge rises in cost of a lot of those products as well. And Jill's probably seeing the rise in cost on the food.
Yeah. And I think just, overall throughout these last 18 to 20 months, it really goes back to communication. I mean, if you think about relationships, it starts with communication. And whether it's our professional relationships, our relationships with our staff, or whoever it may be, it's all about communication. If you have good communication, you can get through anything. And, throughout this pandemic, it was really about, people did work in silos, even in the college and university segment. We were all, I'm on the West Coast, somebody's on the East Coast. But throughout this, we really realized that we needed each other. And so we've come together and we're communicating. We're not in silos that we talked about before. And we're really working together because we're all facing the same challenges, whether it's food supply chain issue or equipment or pieces that would go into the equipment to get out there. We're all facing and struggling with some of the same issues, labor, whatever it may be. And that's the silver lining in this. I think it made us whole. It made us rely on each other and come together as one. And that's what's really important. And that's, it's been hard. It's been very hard, very stressful. But when you could lean in with somebody or you could lean on somebody, it makes it just that much better. And even doing things like this, so there is a silver lining and we need each other. And I think that collaboration and communication is key to any kind of relationship, and especially during a time like this.
I think that is an exceptionally positive point to close the roundtable on. It's been a really engrossing discussion from a top panel. Sojo, Jill, Leif and Mike, massive thanks to you for joining us today. I'd also like to thank Multiteria for supporting the roundtable. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned to fcsi.org for future events. Thank you.